I said this about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade even last year, where that was a big risk, but one that they could afford to take. This is even riskier, in my opinion.
The Knicks announcing that they are firing Tom Thibodeau. Our own Stephen Bondy broke the news that the Knicks are relieving Tom Thibodeau of his duties. This is something Bryan and I have talked about for quite some time throughout the postseason, because there were fans calling for his firing. Their fans have been calling for this for a couple of years. I have a lot of thoughts on this. We're going to get to that. We have a lineup of guests that'll be joining us at 4 or 5. We have Gerard Hector from True Hoop. Then that'll be followed by Mike Vaccaro, great columnist for the New York Post. And then from Knicks Film School, we have John Smelk, followed by Jeff Johnson, guys who've been on the show all before. But Bryan, I'm going to ask you this. News came down. Mm-hmm. I was getting out of an Uber when I saw it on my phone. Steph
I was home.
News. What is your reaction to this? Because I want to say it's shocking in one way, but then kind of not shocking. So what's your reaction to this fire?
It's very surprising until you think a little bit more about it. Like, we understood the possibility was always there. This is something that we talked about extensively, as Dexter mentioned, throughout the playoffs, and how could you not? We even went to the Celtics series with the mindset that, hey, if they look overmatched in this series, he's probably going to be out. They ended up winning the series, and we were like, okay, maybe he saved his job. And then when you look at the context of how he looked and how the Knicks looked in that Pacers series, it's kind of like, oh, maybe they actually need to go in a different direction. So to me, it was always this. I think there's legitimate questions about whether or not he's the right guy, he's the right fit for this roster. But in totality, it's like, I'm not sure if you're going to find somebody better. The Knicks clearly do think that they're going to find somebody better. I think you make this move knowing what you want.
Well, you better know what you
want.
Yeah,
they'll canvas, they'll do interviews, they'll do all these different things. And we have a list of candidates on my phone that I wrote you that I'm like, This is the list of people who will not surprise me. We'll get to that. But in terms of like what's next, I think they have a pretty good idea. They have to have a really good idea of what they want. And Leon Rose, we know, like, he's been smart. I've joked, but actually seriously said he's been the best Knicks GM of my lifetime. And this is basically like going back 3 decades at this point. I think they know what they want.
Well, if you trust Leon Rose, you trust the process you've seen with him, you're going to have to at least try to trust this move. I just want to say what Stephen Bondy had reported here. He said the team felt it's in the best interest of getting to the next level of winning a championship. I think that wording is absolutely interesting. He said the decision was Leon Rose's, who you just mentioned, with the owner's support. So James Dolan was behind this, in supporting this. He's behind this. I think the wording and the fact that it was in the best interest of getting to the next level. Now, the next level's got to be clear on this. The Knicks were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. The goal is to win a championship. I will say this. Whether you are Team Thibs or you're not Team Thibs, this move puts the players, which I always say have agency, on notice.
They have more agency now.
It's like, hey, this is, for some of y'all, Jalen Brunson, this is your guy, right? Josh Hart, this is your guy, but we don't think he can get us to where we got to go. Y'all got to be better. And I have zero problem with that at all whatsoever. Now, to your point,
about that, actually,
you got to get this right, though. And I think you have to get a coach that is different from Thibs. And number one, I'll say, and I'm sure our first guest is going to talk to us about this, it is playing guys, playing a deeper rotation so you can narrow the gap between yourself and the elite teams in the NBA, the 2 teams that are playing in the finals starting on Thursday. That's got to be better. So we'll see. Somebody said something earlier that I thought was a little funny. They were like, yo, the Knicks police, the Minutes police won. I'm like,
they did. They did. They lost all their battles to win the war. They won.
Look, man.
What could you say?
I thought Jeff really spoke well of Thibodeau, and I think that was necessary for the show, and I thought that needed to be said.
Yeah.
If you're a Knicks fan for a long time, you know, and you talked about this, especially a Knicks fan who's your age or younger, you've seen nothing but dark days. You ain't seen much winning, okay? You haven't seen much winning at all. Thibs helped revitalize this franchise. Did he have flaws as a coach? Absolutely.
Every coach has flaws.
Every coach has flaws.
Even
There's no perfect coach out there.
Seriously.
And listen, there's a lot of people, a lot of fans out there that think they can coach better than some of these coaches, right? And it's like, you don't know more basketball than Thibs. You don't know. But when you look at his record, when you look at everything that he's done in his 5 seasons as coach, the winning percentage, the playoff appearances, this guy did a great job. There's no doubt about it.
He's the best coach they've had this century.
He's the best coach they had this century, hands down. He's the best coach they had since Jeff Van Gundy.
He's the
4th all-time winningest coach in Knicks history. If you put a Knicks coaching Mount Rushmore, since y'all like to do all the Mount Rushmore things, he's there.
He's technically on it. Yeah.
He's on there. Like he's absolutely on there.
That's crazy.
No doubt about it whatsoever. Do I think that the Knicks needed to evolve a little bit offensively and in ways of thinking about the team? Yeah, I do. 2 things can be true. I can praise Tom Thibodeau and say how great he was a coach. I can say that he had flaws and think that this was a time. Look, I thought they should have brought him. I thought he was going to come back, and I was fine with Tom Thibodeau coming back.
You mean for this season?
For this season.
Okay.
But I also somewhat respect what Jeff said too, that I have to respect Leon Rose for. It would have been easy to be risk averse, as was the words Jeff used. He's right about that. It's always easy to be like, this is comfortable. I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change.
Especially when you get to the Final Four for the first time in 25 years.
Right. And the Knicks sent a message, though, as an organization that we're not comfortable.
That they want better.
We want better. That's okay.
That they expect better. It's probably a better way of putting that, actually.
Wanting, expecting.
Sure.
But you got to get it right and get the better.
So that's the thing. Like, this is – I said this about the karl-Anthony Towns trade even last year, where that was a big risk, but one that they could afford to take. This is even riskier, in my opinion. It's not to say they're going to get it wrong or what have you, but like a lot of people are like, hey, just find the next Mark Dagnall. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's cool. I mean, it took 5 years for Mark Dagnall to be Mark Dagnall, or maybe 3 or 4.
Right.
But like, this is going to be, I think Jeff, where he said like it's a little bit overstated, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think this is going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. And hiring the person is one thing, and then actually watching it unfold is another. Like, just because you make the right hire, somebody gets hurt in January and they're out for the season. Like, this is how sensitive this time is. So getting it right is one thing, but also the roster construction around it is going to be very interesting. We did get a comment earlier that I found interesting, being like, they asked or said or something along the lines of whether or not this is tied to free agency. And I don't know if that's the leap I'm going to make yet, but I do think this move does signal, hey, they're going to try. If we're talking about they expect better, they want better, and all these different things, I don't expect the roster to look exactly the same as next year.
I think if you're to that point, Brian, before we wrap, I think if you can be aggressive with the coach, you can then be aggressive with the roster. Yes. Now, when we say aggressive with the roster, I think a lot of people are going to take that saying, although I do think John Smelk brought up a good point in that it could be Cat moving. It could be trading Cat and saying that because of what he said, specifically what he said, which I wanted to say.
Which we talked about this season.
We talked about it through the playoffs. When 2 of your best players, your 2 all-NBA players, are your 2 worst defenders, and teams can attack that at the point of attack, and then your center, that is a problem. And this is the point I was trying to make through the playoffs. There's no coach that's going to fix that, guys. I've been saying that. Yeah. You can't take a poor defensive player, as long as Cat's been in the league 10 years, and think all of a sudden it's a coach, or there's something Thibs could have schemed.
They tried, by the way.
Right.
They got OG Anunoby. They got Mikal
They went and got wings, which made sense.
They started Mitchell Robinson.
But you saw in the playoffs, the elite level teams are going to hunt that over and over again. Now, to your point that you just said, if you're changing the coach, which is a risky move, you might just bring a coach that has a philosophy that aligns with where you want to go. You always want your coach and your GM to be on the same page, ideally. Does this work? Now, the coach and GM also to be in the same page about the personnel, the players that are there. So a new coach might come in and say, hey, the way I look at this team and what I try to do, I can't win like that with my 2 all-NBA players being my weakest defenders. And they may want to make another change. I can't live with Josh Hart, although I love all the stuff he does as a non-shooter. They might have to make that change. So if you're going to make changes, it has to line up with what the whole organization feels. And if the organization is looking at the league, they're looking at this team, which is what they're literally paid to do. Sometimes you got to make changes. I always say this, and I'll close with this. Sports, it's a job. This is work. It's like any other workplace. Sometimes you work places and you work with people. Everybody out here knows. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And you got to make changes. And there are people who are in management that are paid to make those decisions, make those changes. They're tough decisions. Everybody's not a boss. Everybody can't be a manager, right? I could be doing the show, and an executive producer come and say, hey, Dex, we want you to change this and make this. That's what they're paid to do. And that's cool. Sometimes it's difficult changes to get to where you want to go. We don't know today if it's going to work out, Brian. You don't know. I don't know. We could have theories about it. We will see if it works out. The fans don't know. I think the news is going to be very interesting.
Very.
I tell people to stay tuned.